The first time Daniel noticed something was wrong, it was not because of the money. It was because of the silence. For 11 years, Daniel had run a small funeral home in a quiet part of town where everyone knew everyone, and everyone smiled too long at one another. He had handled grief, guilt, inheritance wars, family secrets, and enough tears to fill a river. But this silence was different. This silence had teeth. It began on a rainy Thursday evening when a woman in a black coat walked into his office carrying a sealed brown envelope. She did not sit down. She did not introduce herself. She only placed the envelope on his desk and said, "If anything happens to me, do not let my son open this until the third day." Daniel looked up sharply. "Ma'am, are you in danger?" She hesitated for 1 second too long. Then she gave a small, tired smile. "I'm in a family," she said. "That's usually the same thing." Before Daniel could ask another question, she turned and walked out into the rain. He opened the envelope after she left. Inside was a single handwritten note, a key, and a sentence that made his hands go cold. "My son is not the first person buried under my roof." Daniel read it twice, then 3 times. His office phone rang. He nearly jumped. The caller ID showed an unknown number. He answered, and a man's voice whispered from the other end, "She came to you, didn't she?" Daniel stood frozen. "Who is this?" The voice was calm, almost amused. "Just do what she asked. If her son comes asking questions, tell him the truth." Then the call ended. Daniel stared at the envelope, the note, the key. And for the first time in years, the funeral home felt less like a place for the dead, and more like a place where something alive was waiting to be uncovered. Daniel did not sleep that night. He kept the envelope on his kitchen table, the key beside it, as if moving it might wake something dangerous. At 2:13 a.m., he finally gave in and called the woman back, but the number was dead. No ringtone. No voicemail. Nothing. By morning, he had already made a decision. He drove to the address written on the key tag. 17 Alder Lane, a house at the edge of town that had been abandoned for years. The windows were boarded up. The garden was overgrown. Yet the front door was not locked. Inside, the air smelled of dust, wet wood, and old perfume. "Hello," Daniel called. No answer. He followed the hallway until he reached a small study. On the desk sat a photo album, a tape recorder, and a second envelope with his name on it. Daniel opened the envelope first. The letter inside was from the same woman. Her handwriting was shaking. "Daniel, if you are reading this, it means I was too late. My name is Alara Vale. The son you will meet is called Adrian, but that is not his real name. 10 years ago, I tried to save him from my husband. I failed. My husband buried the truth in this house, and now he has returned to finish what he started." Daniel's mouth went dry. He looked at the tape recorder. The label on it read, "Play only when Adrian arrives." Just then a floorboard creaked behind him. Daniel turned so fast he nearly dropped the letter. A boy, maybe 21, stood in the doorway, soaked from the rain and breathing hard. He had sharp eyes, a split lip, and the expression of someone who expected betrayal from every direction. "You're Daniel," he said. Daniel nodded slowly. The boy stepped closer. "Then she really came here." Daniel held up the letter. "You know what this is?" The boy stared at the envelope, then at the study around them, and his face tightened. "I know exactly what this is," he said. "And if my stepfather finds me here, both of us are dead." He reached into his jacket and pulled out a photograph. It showed Alara, younger and smiling, standing in front of this same house. Next to her was a man Daniel had never seen before. And under the photo, written in red ink, were 3 words. "He still lives here." Daniel looked at Adrian, then at the photograph again. Who is he? Adrian swallowed hard. A man who should have been dead years ago. He stepped inside, shut the door, and locked it behind him with trembling fingers. "My mother told me this house belonged to my family. She lied. This house belongs to him. He used it to control her, threaten her, and hide things no one was ever supposed to find." Daniel looked toward the study. "Then why come here now?" Adrian let out a bitter laugh. "Because she finally had the courage to run. And because she thought he wouldn't notice." Before Daniel could answer, the tape recorder on the desk clicked on by itself. A man's voice filled the room. "If you're hearing this," the voice said, Then Alara failed. Adrian went pale. The voice continued, smooth and cold. You can hide the truth, Alara. You can run to strangers. But you cannot hide my son forever. Daniel stared at Adrian. He knows you're here. Adrian nodded slowly. He always knew. Then the front door downstairs slammed open. Footsteps came from the hallway below. Slow, heavy, certain. Daniel grabbed Adrian by the arm and whispered, "Is there another exit?" Adrian shook his head. Boarded up. The footsteps stopped at the bottom of the stairs. Then a voice called out, calm as ever. "Adrian, come down. We need to talk." Daniel moved toward the study window and peeled back the curtain. A black car sat outside the house. One man stood at the door. He was tall, neatly dressed, and smiling like he owned the air. Adrian whispered, "That's him." The man started up the stairs. Daniel grabbed the old brass lamp from the desk and held it like a weapon. "Stay behind me." The man reached the landing and paused in the doorway. His eyes settled on Daniel first, then Adrian. "How interesting," he said. "You brought help." Daniel said nothing. The man stepped inside, hands in his pockets. "I'm Victor Vale. And you are standing in property that does not belong to you." Adrian snapped. "You lied to me." Victor tilted his head. "No, son. I taught you to survive." Adrian's jaw tightened. "Where is my mother?" Victor smiled faintly. "That depends. Do you want the answer that keeps you alive? Or the one that ruins everything?" No one spoke for a moment. Then Daniel said, "Where is Alara?" Victor looked at him as if noticing him for the first time. "You're brave for a funeral, man. Answer the question." Victor took one slow step into the room. "Your client's wife has a habit of making dramatic exits. She was here this morning. She left behind documents she should never have taken." Adrian's face hardened. "You hurt her." Victor's expression did not change. "I protected my family." "You destroyed it," Adrian said. Victor's eyes flashed. "Everything I did was to keep this household from collapsing under the weight of her lies." He reached into his coat and pulled out a folded paper. "She has a letter for you, Adrian. She asked me to give it to you." Adrian did not move. Victor tossed the letter onto the desk. "Read it. Then decide whether you still want to pretend she's innocent." Daniel noticed something then. Victor was too calm, too polished. Men like that did not come to houses alone, unless they were confident the truth was already in their favor. Adrian picked up the letter with shaking hands. His eyes scanned the first line. Then his face changed. "What is this?" he whispered. Victor's smile sharpened. "Now you're asking the right questions." Adrian's hands trembled as he kept reading. "This can't be true," he said. Daniel stepped closer. "What does it say?" Adrian looked up, stunned. "It says my mother isn't my mother." Victor let out a small, satisfied breath. Daniel turned slowly toward him. "Explain." Victor folded his arms. "Alara stole Adrian from a hospital in another district 19 years ago. She was not his birth mother. She took him before the records could be corrected, then vanished into this town and built a new story." Adrian shook his head violently. "No. She raised me." "Yes," Victor said. "She did. After she took you." The room spun with the weight of it. Daniel felt cold all over. "And the buried person under this house?" Victor's smile vanished. Adrian whispered, "What person?" Victor looked at the floor for a long second. "Your real father came looking." Silence crashed down on the room. Daniel stared at him. "You killed him." Victor did not answer. Adrian stepped back, horror flooding his face. "You murdered him and made my mother live with you?" Victor finally looked annoyed. "He was not the man you think he was." Adrian's voice cracked. "You're a monster." Victor took a slow breath. "I'm a man who protected what was mine." Daniel realized then that this was no kidnapping story. It was a family war. And Adrian was standing in the middle of a grave. Adrian suddenly shoved the desk aside and grabbed the tape recorder. "Then let's hear what else he left behind." He pressed play. Static crackled, then a woman's voice came through. It was Alara. "Adrian, if you are hearing this, then I failed to get you out in time. Listen carefully. Victor is not your father. He never was. He took you because he needed an heir he could shape. I found out too late. Daniel watched Adrian's face drain of color. The recording continued. There is one thing he does not know. Your birth name was not Adrian. It was Elias. And your real father is alive. Victor moved fast. He knocked the recorder from Adrian's hand, sending it crashing to the floor. Enough. Adrian lunged at him, but Victor struck him hard across the face. Daniel reacted instantly, swinging the lamp into Victor's shoulder. Victor staggered, more shocked than hurt, and Daniel shouted, "Run!" But Adrian didn't run. He grabbed the fallen tape recorder and yanked out the cassette. "What did she mean?" he yelled. "Who is my real father?" Victor touched his shoulder, eyes dark with fury. "You are not ready for that truth." Adrian backed toward the door. "I'm ready for every lie you've ever told." Victor reached into his pocket. Daniel saw the shape of a gun. And just before everything shattered, the house upstairs rang with a woman's scream. Adrian froze. "That's her." Victor's face went pale for the first time. Daniel pointed at him. "Who is upstairs?" Victor's voice was no longer calm. "You don't understand what's happening." "Then explain," Daniel shouted. But Victor was already moving toward the hallway, gun raised. Adrian rushed after him and Daniel followed, heart pounding. They reached the second floor landing in time to see a woman at the end of the corridor. Alara. She was bruised, barefoot, and holding a small metal box against her chest. Adrian ran to her. "Mom!" She grabbed his face with both hands, crying with relief. "I knew you'd come." Victor raised the gun. "Give me the box." Alara shook her head. "Not anymore." Daniel stepped between them. "What is in the box?" Alara looked at him with tears in her eyes. "Proof." Victor's voice was low and dangerous. "You should have stayed hidden." Alara opened the box. Inside were medical records, photographs, and a small silver ring. Adrian stared at the ring. "Whose is that?" Alara looked at Victor. "Your father's." Victor's expression twisted. Alara said, "He didn't die in this house. He escaped. And for 19 years, Victor has been hunting him." Victor fired. The bullet hit the wall above Alara's shoulder. Chaos exploded. Daniel pulled Alara and Adrian into the nearest room and slammed the door. Victor was outside, shouting for them to open up. Adrian's breathing was ragged. "He really did kill someone." Alara nodded. "Your father survived the night he disappeared. I found him 3 months ago. He's alive but weak. Victor doesn't know where he is." Daniel looked at the papers in the box. "Then this is the evidence he's been trying to bury." Alara wiped her face. "If he gets it back, everything is lost." The doorknob rattled hard. "Open the door," Victor said, voice sharp now. "And I may still allow you all to walk away." Adrian looked at Alara. "What do we do?" She handed him the silver ring. "You decide whether you want to be his son, or the son of the man he tried to erase." Adrian stared at the ring, then at the door. And in that moment his expression changed. Not fear. Resolve. He crossed to the window, smashed it with a chair and shouted, "Daniel, help my mother." Then he climbed out into the rain. Daniel turned to Alara. "What is he doing?" Alara whispered. The one thing Victor never expected. She looked toward the broken window. "He's going to bring the truth to the police himself." By dawn, the story had become impossible to hide. Adrian reached the station with the box. Alara followed. Daniel came last, soaked, exhausted, and still trying to understand how a funeral home had turned into the center of a buried crime. The evidence inside the box was enough to reopen an old disappearance, expose forged records, and connect Victor Vale to a decade of threats and blackmail. Victor was arrested before noon, but not before one last attempt to escape through the back entrance. He never made it. The real twist came 2 days later. Alara called Daniel to the hospital. Adrian was standing beside a bed where an older man with kind eyes and a weak smile lay waiting. "My father," Adrian said quietly. The man looked at Daniel and nodded. "Thank you for keeping them alive." Daniel had no words. Adrian turned to him. "You could have walked away." Daniel gave a tired smile. "Not after the first scream." Weeks later, the funeral home received a new sign on the front door. "Not because of the dead. Because of the living." Daniel kept the envelope, the tape recorder, and the silver ring in his office drawer. People still came to him with grief, secrets, and unfinished business. But now, when someone walked through the door with a story that did not make sense, Daniel listened carefully. Because he had learned something that rainy night. Sometimes the darkest thing in a family is not what was buried. It is what was kept alive.